ready to. You say the hello thing because you can hear the music, right? So you know when to say hello.
That's true. I hit start streaming right now, though. So for anyone who's listening, welcome.
Yeah. Oh, no. You're showing them how the bread's made.
Oh, fuck. My 1 penny per year. Hang on. Let me get that file. Ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. It's thinking about it. Come on. It's only 300 kilobytes. How bad could it be? Welcome to All the Way Down, episode 12, everyone. I am your host, Invictus Knox, and I am here with my co-host, Dash Retro. How you doing, Dash?
I'm fine. I'm still frozen in time, though, apparently.
You know,
I need you to save me.
Some people say it's better to be that way, but...
I am doing well. It's I've been playing games all day and feeling good.
Awesome.
Well, not all day. I had to work, I did the usual thing.
Gotcha. I did the same. Tonight's an interesting topic because for those who haven't seen in my Discord, we were talking about finding out rather that I knew this was you're mostly like a Nintendo person.
Yeah.
But I didn't know just how little experience with Sega stuff you've had. So what is your extent of actual like Sega gaming in general?
So growing up, my grandmother had a Sega in I didn't even know this for a while. I had my grandparents on one side of my family, they had an NES, right? And it was out, and when we were there, we played NES, and it was great. My other grandparents were like the boring grandparents, and so at some point, though, I found out in their house that there was like a Sega in a drawer, and I was like, all right, well, I guess this is close to Mario. So they had a Sega with, I don't know if they had Sonic, but I believe they had Clay Fighter. They had a Clay Fighter game.
What? Hang on. Clay Fighter. For Sega?
Yeah, because
Clay Fighter to me is N64. Am I fucking that up?
Well, there was Clay Fighter 63 and a third for N64, yeah, but there was a Clay Fighter on Sega also.
Oh my god, yeah, the original Clay Fighter. It was on SNES as well as Genesis. I thought it was just on SNES.
Yeah, so I played that a little bit, but I wasn't really all that good at it. There was a guy named like Ichabod Clay though, or something. He was pretty cool. But yeah, I've played some Sonic the Hedgehog, and I've played a little bit of that. And then at some point, my brother got a Genesis, and I played a pretty little amount of Castlevania Bloodlines, which was sweet. And then I actually beat Contra Hardcore. Contra Hardcore is the one Sega game that I have played all the way through. And I've actually I played it and I liked it, and I was like, hey, this is pretty good, and I beat it because I liked it. Right? That's the one Sega game.
Okay, as a kid though?
I probably played through Contra Hardcore more 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And then the Bloodlines was probably 10 years ago that I played that, and then everything else was when I was a kid.
So you went to your grandparents to play Contra Hardcore and Castlevania Bloodlines?
No, those were a little bit later when my brother got a Genesis.
Oh, Jesus, sorry. I missed that one detail. I was like, dude, what? Yeah. What kind of grandparents did you have? Jesus, that was awesome, if so.
Yeah, no, they just had Clay Fighter. I think it was my cousins or something, and then it ended up at their place or something. So yeah, I don't have much Sega experience. I never really liked Sega all that much. Because let's talk more here instead of what was my experience. Instead, it's all right, so Sega to me, I've never liked the controller, and that's always been just a huge thing.
Wow.
Where I don't know. Like I played Contra Hardcore and I really liked that game, right? However, the controller doesn't have shoulder buttons. So when you play something like Contra 3, which I played a lot more of, you can hold a shoulder button to stand in place and then shoot all around you, and that's like super important. In Contra Hardcore, you can do the same thing, but there's no shoulder button. Instead, it's like you have to like hit A to switch between like sticky and not sticky mode, So
Okay,
it's like
so I'm actually a huge Contra noob. What is sticky mode?
as in like so let's say you want to shoot diagonally up and right, but you don't want your character to be running right because you're
Oh,
holding right. You know what I
okay, yeah.
mean? Yeah. Like your D-pad left and right moves you and then down ducks and that kind of thing. But also your character shoots in the direction that you're aiming the D-pad. So if in situations where you want to be aiming but not moving, on Super Nintendo you just hold R, right? But on Genesis, you have to like move your thumb off of the shoot and jump buttons to hit a toggle button to
Oh.
turn it on and turn it off. So it's like, just stuff like that. I'm just not,
Well, okay,
I'm not
so let
into.
me ask this. When you played that, did you use the Genesis 6 button or the 3 button controller?
I
Or
believe, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did it not matter? I've never played it, so I was gonna say the Genesis has one. I think there's one like corner button on a few Genesis controllers. I can't remember which one that was.
Yeah,
But
it says mode, I think it's
yeah,
called. I don't know what that does.
so that's on the 6 button controllers. I want to say that's what allows you to in game. That was Sega's way of retroactively making sure that if you had a 6 button controller on a game that was designed for a 3 button controller, I want to say you could hit that button and it would turn it into like I would change something with the actual functionality. I'm butchering this concept entirely, but yeah, it's made to essentially make sure the new controllers are backwards compatible. I want to say,
Oh, okay. So
or to
yeah,
make
like
it.
there's that.
Sorry.
Contra Hardcore is a sweet game though, but like okay, so the big Sega game, right, is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Mm.
I've never liked Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know. I hate the way it controls, the way that like it feels like it takes just way more effort to get up to speed and stuff.
And I think
And
you have very fair. If that was your intro to Sonic, I think it's very fair that you dislike that because, in my opinion, Sonic the Hedgehog is before they figured out Sonic.
oh yeah,
I've never played Sonic 2, but my first Genesis game was Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So they had basically figured out the whole go fast 2D platforming element by this time. And from what I hear of a lot of people, they say Sonic the Hedgehog 2, they say that's the game that everyone says is the best, but actually 3 is the best. It's like a little bit underrated. Anyway,
okay.
when I beat Sonic 1, it felt like Sonic was in a Mario game. And Green Hill Zone was a cool demo enough for you to go, oh, look, I can dash, I can go fast, I can go around this loop-de-loop when I catch full speed. Maybe I should just keep this running start thing a thing. And when you jump and you hit things, well, that doesn't count as a speed penalty. That actually, will get you an item or etc. But my God, the level design in the first Sonic is straight up Mario wannabe, and its mechanics aren't. It is. It's. I don't know how else to say it other than it's Sonic in a Mario game, which is not how it should be.
Right. Yeah, like Green Hill Zone, I agree. Green Hill Zone is pretty fun. Yeah, there's like you see the loops, you see the like there's like the tunnels that you through, and the music's pretty good and a lot of the sound effects are pretty pleasing, and like there's that cliff that when you land on it it breaks apart and stuff and you're like,
Yes.
okay, this is like 16-bit platforming. It's pretty cool. But then yeah, you get to Marble Zone and it's just instant trash. And I've never like
Yeah, pretty much.
I've never like played or I don't think I've beaten the game. I might have, but I don't. No,
It's not
yeah,
hard.
I don't remember if I've beaten it, but I didn't particularly like it. So then yeah, and I never paid any attention to Sonic 2 or 3. So after that I'm thinking like, okay, then there was like Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast, which everybody acts like is a good game, but I've looked at it and I'm telling you that game looks straight up garbo.
All right.
Just icky garbo.
All right. All right. I'm not going to sit here and take that. Just kidding. Sonic Adventure is not as good as I thought was going to be. And I beat Sonic Adventure, I want to say last year on stream. And it was because I wanted to see where the pinnacle of 3D Sonic is. And I think everyone kind of agrees that Sonic Adventure is generally where you'd go to get that. You're not going to go for Sonic 3D Blast. You're not going to go for whatever. God, I think they had like a weird project for the Saturn that never panned out. But it was the Dreamcast where 3D Sonic really took hold. And I will say, the intro to the game, where it goes for the first couple of seconds, I want to say you're actually like 2D, and then it shifts you into a 3D version of Sonic being. Honestly, it's kind of weird how it works a lot like Sonic Adventure, or the Sonic the Hedgehog one, where it's like the first level is like a beautiful, great tech demo. You're going to have fun. It's like, oh shit, this is a little clunky, but you know, it's this era of 2D. At the time, you really wouldn't have known the difference as general like platforming goes. But Sonic Adventure, once you got through it, I'll say this. Once I beat it with Sonic, I had no desire to go through and beat it with all the other characters. I played it on the GameCube, so I didn't play the Dreamcast version. I played the DX version with the GameCube controller, and honestly, that game made me like the Dreamcast controller. Not going to go too far into that, but yes, I think you are right from your experience. You are right probably to not like Sonic or, in general, Sega stuff. Like Sega in general, but if that's your experience.
Like then we don't even need to get into like Sonic 06 and all that shit. Like you know, to me Sonic has always just been like just a straight up embarrassment for video games. But I've not played Sonic 2 and 3. So maybe those were the two good ones, and because we got two good games, we are now all doomed to a lifetime of embarrassment of what Sonic has become. And so thank God we got two good games. Anyway, back to the Genesis.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about Sonic anymore. Go ahead.
So I've owned a Genesis now for a while. I went out and bought one like a couple years ago. But I didn't get any games, and I've never bothered to get any games for it, so it's just been sitting there with no games. But I finally got a couple games, because the thing is, I already beat Contra Hardcore, right? I'm really into Contra, so I've already played through Contra Hardcore. The other thing is I'm really into Castlevania. So the thing is, now that I've played all the Castlevanias up to and including Rondo of Blood, the next Sonic game that was, Castlevania game that was released is Castlevania Bloodlines. So now it's finally time for me to fire up the Genesis and play some Castlevania Bloodlines, and I'm really excited about it. You know, I think that as far as I know about Castlevania controls, I don't think that the controller should be any issue for me, really, and yeah, I'm excited about it.
I think a lot of the problems. I should say this. I think the Sega Genesis controllers. Well, let me preface it. I think anything versus the SNES controller already has one of the worst jobs ever to try and accomplish. But I will say that the Sega Genesis controller, 3-button and 6-button, honestly, I would even go a little bit further as to say that the 3-button is more ergonomic than any controller of that generation. More so.
On your hands?
No, in my feet actually. But when I'm holding,
questioning it because I'm like, well, it's definitely not comfortable in your hands. So what the fuck are you talking about?
Okay, so all right, big disagreement here. I have big fucking hands, so maybe that might contribute to it. But I love the 3-button controller because it is simultaneously less complex and more complex than the SNES controller in terms of like what you can do. More complex in that games didn't really seem to understand right away the best kind of way to have a one-row set of 3 buttons that one finger would be touching. namely your thumb. And when they're all in the same row like that, you'd kind of generally think they're the same priority. Streets of Rage 1, worst offender of all that I've encountered. You go through, you have your normal attack, you have your special attack, or you have your jump, you have your attack, and then you have your special attack. Your special attack by default is A in that button, or in that game. You can change it around to be C or B or whatever. You can move it around in the options, but like default, you're wasting your ultimate attack way early every time, almost all the way, all the time in like a fight that you didn't mean to hit the button on.
Yeah, because in Streets of Rage, your special is like a once per level kind of thing, right?
I think it's once per life, so you can use it
Okay.
one time every time you're alive, no matter what level you're on. But yeah, it's insanely frustrating when you use that when you were trying to save it for the boss. That I agree with. But stuff where it's a little bit more simple, just like platforming or Sonic, I was just like flying through shit as a kid. I didn't have a Super Nintendo ever, but I had a daycare where I played as much as I could on it. I've owned Sega and Nintendo stuff all my life, but like I liked my Sega Genesis a lot. Sega games, I can't recommend Contra Hardcore, because I heard that game is fucking insanely hard, and I never played it. But when I think of Sega games, I think of something immediately more so than the games about why they feel so different, and that's the audio. I don't know how you feel about the audio of Sega Genesis games, but they have a very unique sound to them. I want to say it was a Yamaha sound chip that the Sega Genesis uses on board. It creates a very kind of like lo-fi MIDI kind of sound, whereas the SNES sound chip will give you not better or worse, but different. Very different. And I would honestly argue a little bit closer to an accurate representation of what a video game should sound like. It's just Sega Genesis had such a unique, different sound that audio being half the fucking experience, you have an entirely different concept of with the experience of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like how Genesis looks and sounds generally, as far as the games go. And if I do have one criticism of the Super Nintendo, I do think that the sound is like the weakest point of the Super Nintendo. A lot of the sound is a little muffled sounding, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Genesis is like, right, it's got that going for it. That's kind of what I'm excited about with Castlevania. And I remember Contra, looking really, really good. There's just it being able to handle quite a bit going on screen and such. And yeah, it was a hard game. Contra games are generally very, very tough, and that one was no different. One thing that's really interesting about that one compared to the other Contras is there is a character select. So normally in Contra, you're either Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, and you're just a big muscly beefcake, and then all of the power-ups or like the different guns are just like dropped at different points in the levels, right? There's like things that fly across and they drop a different weapon for you, and you can choose which one you want, and if you die, you lose it, and yada yada.
It's like a Castlevania sub weapon.
Yeah, like the sub weapons. In Contra Hardcore though, instead, it's like there's 4 playable characters, except one of them is a fucking werewolf wearing sunglasses and denim jeans. So there's really actually just one playable character, because why would you play as any character that's not the werewolf wearing sunglasses and jeans? But anyway, so there's 4 playable characters, and they all have 4 unique weapons that are just A, B, C, and D, I think. So that's kind of neat, the way that there's just 4 different characters that play differently. One of them is pretty cool though. There's also a robot that's really good because he can double jump, and also he's like shorter than the other people, so he can run underneath a lot of bullets that the other characters would have to duck under and stuff. But
it does sound like
a
very Konami game. I'm thinking it sounds a lot like Castlevania 3, actually.
it's a pretty cool game. I really liked it. But yeah, so I really liked that one. I'm looking forward to Castlevania. But yeah, so this is kind of my introduction to Genesis. I don't really know a lot about the games on it. I'll say I got one other recommendation
Mm.
from a friend of mine, and that is Gunstar Heroes. Um,
I know
he
nothing
said,
about that game, but I've heard it is amazing from anyone who knows about it.
yeah, I watched Popo, our buddy Popo,
Mm.
play it for like 5 minutes, and it looked super, super great. You know, I was like, wow, this game looks amazing. And then a good friend of mine, also just what's the word? A good friend of mine recommended me the game without having been in that other conversation. It was one of those things where it just came up again, you know. Oh, I should play this game, and I was like, damn, I just saw that and picked it up, and yeah, we'll check that out as well. It kind of looked like Contra from what I saw. It looked similar to Contra, but instead of different weapons dropping, it was like you picked your weapons, I think, and also you picked two weapons and they combined, you know? So
Oh.
it was like like you could have spread shot and homing, and if you had both of them, it did both, right? But you could get like homing, and then it was like double homing, you know, and stuff like that. So yeah, it seems pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's Gunstar Heroes. I've watched like maybe 5 seconds of, but it looks pretty fun from what I've seen. I agree. My problem is kind of twofold in that when I was a kid, the games I could afford were official U.S. PlayStation Magazine demo discs, and that was it. So I didn't have a
Nice.
whole lot of games for the Sega Genesis as a kid. What I had was I had Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I had two games which are fantastic, which are Vector Man, platformer game. It was kind of like I've heard it referred to as Sega's ripoff of Mega Man, but honestly, I don't agree with it. Specifically because maybe like Mega Man X, because I haven't played that and I know there's a little bit more platforming involved in that, but I would definitely say at least it can stand on its own because Mega Man has different forms that he can take. Vector Man has different forms that he can take based off of different power ups. It's kind of like in how a shoot 'em up game goes. You get different power ups that would be maybe you have like a blast wave, or maybe you're just shooting straight up orbs. They all last just a temporary amount of time, but like they're weapon upgrades. But you can also do body upgrades where your vector, like you're just a bunch of green balls animated into human form, kind of like anthropomorphization. But you can be like a buggy, quote unquote, like you turn into like this little car and
Wait, so he's like Knack?
knack.
Yeah, where he's like made up of a bunch of little things.
Uh, yeah, but like I don't know who Knack is.
All right, go on. So you're the car.
Yeah, you're Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park. But like you can be a car, you can be a train, and this kind of coincides with like what boss you're fighting at the time. Like there's a boss section where like this big, like I think his name is like Megaton or something. He's like this gigantic also Orbot. They're called Orbots. You're a robot with like floating balls essentially as your body. But he's like grabbing at this train bridge, like he's gigantic and he's just swinging off it like a monkey bar while you're just trying to cross this bridge going to the next level, and you have to jump or shoot, and it's cool. It's different from the platforming you do in the main levels. And then there's another game called a puzzle game, which is probably had a huge amount of influence on me as a gamer in general, which is called Columns. A lot of people don't really care for Columns, and I was surprised at that because it's actually a really fun puzzle game with a great soundtrack and a lot of replayability and a good versus mode too. Probably one of the cheapest games you can buy on Sega. But I would say if I would say Columns is probably responsible for a ton of people finding out that they love puzzle games, being competitive. It's so imagine a cross hybrid between Tetris and Bejeweled. Does that make sense? You know how
I actually have no idea what Bejeweled really is.
so
I've only heard the
Bejeweled
name.
Bejeweled is kind of like imagine you have a screen full of shit already. and you just
Okay, yeah.
rotate shit around to make patterns and eliminate that way. Whereas Tetris,
Hmm.
you're actively trying to eliminate row by row in your actual column of shit to get rid of.
So in Bejeweled, are you trying to make like lines or like just connections of the same color?
In Bejeweled, you were just trying to make the biggest area amount possible of a certain color gem, and then
The biggest area,
yeah, and
not
that
like a line.
you can do lines, you can do diagonals. I want to say no, not diagonals in
Mm.
Bejeweled. No diagonals, but horizontal,
'Cause it kind of
vertical, and dropping as well. I want to say, so you can combo.
okay.
And then you can do that in columns as well. The thing is, you get 3 gems at every new column, I guess you can call it, and you can change the order of those gems in this vertical line of just 3 gems that are falling. So you can change the order, and then that way it's kind of like Tetris, but it's still got the Bejeweled aspect of moving the pieces within your piece to make it so you can actually create combos and eliminate that way, and etc.
Okay.
It's pretty
That
fun.
kind of sounds like Puyo Puyo.
Puyo
Almost.
Puyo is so I have very little experience with it, but it's the same thing as Dr. Mario, right?
So in a little bit, yeah. In Puyo, it's like it's like Tetris where they're dropping and you can rotate them and stuff,
Mm.
and then but each thing that drops is 2 segments of maybe 2 different colors or maybe 2 of the same. And in the board, you want to make like connect 4, either in horizontally, vertically, in a square, or like it can be diagonally connected as well. Not diagonally as in like not touching, but as in like it can be here and then up a square and then right a square and then up a square.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
yeah, the whole idea is you want to match 4, and then the other ones will drop down, and you want to get combos with that.
yeah, I've played very little Puyo Puyo or Dr. Mario, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with those, but I have played a whole lot of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, but that's not a Genesis game. That's an arcade thing.
Right, right.
But
Did you ever play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine?
No, but I heard it's the same thing. Same thing as Puyo
Yeah,
Puyo.
it's just a reskin of it. That's why I was curious.
I definitely want it though because it's Sonic related.
Mhm. I did actually play that when I was younger a bit as well.
Wow.
I thought I was good at it. Oh man, I thought I was good at Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine from when I was like a kid. And then when I was like 22 or something, someone was like playing a bunch of it. And they were telling me like, oh, I've been playing Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and I can't beat the last boss. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm hella good at that game from when I was a kid. I'll come over. Well, they invited me over, right? I didn't invite myself.
Okay, glad you specified.
Yeah. So I went over there and we played like head to head, and oh my God, they just wiped the floor with me like 30-0 head to head on the game. So it turns out that I was not good at it, and
This is the
you know.
pain of fighting games. Oh man.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to talk about fighting games in a little bit, but for a second here, your experience with Sega, does it end at Genesis?
Yeah, I never had a Dreamcast. I will say when I was a kid, my neighbors had that other one.
The Sega
That was
Saturn?
Saturn. They had a Saturn, and I played a lot of Daytona USA on it.
That's awesome that you got that. I see. When I was a kid, I didn't even know the Sega Saturn existed. Long story short, that's pretty common in the United States, unfortunately, because did Sega of Japan piss off Sega of America, and it did not work out well for the retailers. But so my experience is actually surprisingly similar to yours in that I didn't know the Saturn existed. I wanted a Dreamcast, but by the time I knew about Dreamcast's existence, PS2 had just released, and I think the sales figures at the time were speaking for themselves. For whatever reason, my mom chose to get me a PS2 for Christmas instead of a Dreamcast that year. Man, what an awful life I lived, Fuck everything about my childhood. Anyway, it was like it was kind of sad for me that I didn't like get to continue Sega, But from what I understood, Sega didn't really continue a couple of years after that because everything's just started porting to the GameCube and Xbox, and it was a hard time to be a Sega fan. But in the early '90s, that's where I caught my stride, and that's where I understood what a console game was. And I think I actually experienced Sega Genesis before I experienced the NES and Super Nintendo. But I will say this. When I did play NES, I found it insanely good and very addictive to play the few games that I was able to play, namely Track and Field, obviously Super Mario Bros., and then another big one for me was Rygar. I was blown away by the graphics that looked like not that different from my Sega. I was like, this is pretty damn good. I didn't have any idea at the time because I was too young. I didn't have any idea at the time like what generation was what, or this is old. It was all just video games, I went to daycare and they had Nintendo. I was at my house. I had Sega, and I had fun on either one. But I was curious about your intro to Sega because I think for the majority of people, most people didn't have Sega at all, so it's cool to see the differences. It's like one of those weird Gen Zers react to this video or something, except it's someone I can relate to actually.
I feel like we're still basically gonna get that because, like, besides Contra Hardcore, I mean, I would say that I still haven't really dug into Sega because I haven't, like, I don't own any games for it until now, It was always just something that someone else had that I either played a little bit while I was there or I borrowed it from them for a minute, So yeah, now I finally own a couple Sega games and we get to play them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's all I had to say about that. Did you want to talk about anything specific from your end this week?
Well, I'm very interested to talk about fighting games with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much you care about fighting games in general. I was curious, so I know you're not a fighting game person, but if you were to get into them, let me ask, where would you start? What's got your eye the most?
Guilty Gear, maybe, or Mortal Kombat. Like the newer Mortal Kombats look pretty cool, or also the newer Guilty Gears look pretty cool. If I played something older though, then probably just like Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2 is actually the thing that made me love my Genesis the most. I had Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition on Sega, and that was like, aside from the 5 minutes of Mortal Kombat I got to play at my daycare, that was my intro to fighting games. I just lied. My intro to fighting games was an earlier, like, mid-'80s arcade game that my daycare for some reason had. It was a fucking awesome daycare, you really think about it. But anyway, the actual fighting game experience I got with real mechanics involved in what a fighting game would eventually become to be known as was on Genesis. And that's because Street Fighter 2 essentially defined so much for fighting games in terms of, like, what you can do attack-wise, defense-wise, movement-based, even down to character archetypes. Like, Mortal Kombat back in the day is what everyone had their eye on. It was the thing that visually caught everyone's eye because, oh my God, first of all, those are real people I'm looking at. They're actually getting dismembered on my TV. and depending on which Mortal Kombat game you play, when I blow him up, there's like 30 rib cages for some reason. They just have gibs all over the place. But
like, back then, the photographs of a dude was like, it looked like the best graphics you'd ever seen.
Oh my God. Yeah. Aside from like the one time, this one kid, we'll call him Derek, loaded up a game into the Super Nintendo called Power Rangers the Movie. That FMV game, I was like, mind blown. I was like just watching shitty versions of the TV show. I was like, this is the best graphics ever. Yeah, but aside from that, agreed. Yeah, Mortal Kombat, photorealistic, blood, gore, all this stuff. Enough to the point where, if we're talking about Sega here, Sega never got the blood censored out of Mortal Kombat 2. Or Mortal Kombat
You did
1.
have to put in a code to get it though, right? I think that
No.
was Mortal Kombat 1. Yeah. Or was it? Wait a second.
Sega had
What am
blood
I
the whole
thinking
time.
of? Then I guess it was in the Nintendo one then you had to put in a code to get the blood.
I think
But
they
I
actually color swapped it entirely. I think you'd have to use a game genie to make that stuff red again. They turned it in, they tried to
okay.
describe it as like sweat or spit.
Right. So I am 100% sure that in one of the games you had to put in a code in order to get blood. And I want to say it was Genesis because I think the Nintendo one just didn't have it at all.
Mortal Kombat 1 or 2?
I think one, but I'm not positive.
Because I don't know if I ever does 1 exist on Genesis? I'm pretty sure it was only 2. I can't remember.
Okay, then it might have been two then. I'm not sure. All I know, the only detail that I'm 100% on is putting in a code
Yeah.
to get blood.
So your interest in fighting games initially is are two very insanely different games.
Well, yeah.
Mortal Kombat is for good or worse. Mortal Kombat is always going to be Mortal Kombat. It's always going to be a game where you have 4 attack buttons and a block button as well as your normal directional input. It's going to be your high punch, low punch, high kick, low kick, and then block. And in later games they even added a run button, which don't even get me started, dude. The mechanics of it are just not good when you okay. If Mortal Kombat were the only fighting game, it'd be great. But at the same time, it was competing with Street Fighter 2. And Street Fighter 2 introduced not only like complex. Okay, I'm gonna sound like a scrub when I say this because when I played original Mortal Kombat, the whole point was walk up to your enemy, do as many sweep kicks as you can, or just spam low punch 1,000 times to just punch in the air 1,000,000 times an hour, and then hopefully you'll remember a fatality at the end. There is actual, real complex, high-level gameplay to every fighting game. Mortal Kombat has it, and it's not that. But Street Fighter 2, mechanic-wise, it's just working on another level. So you got the 6-button Genesis pad, which this is the reason to be a Sega person at the time. Is if you were into fighting games, this was where you went. If you were like 100% of the population and couldn't afford a Neo Geo AES to rent from some company that for some reason had it to rent, you had a 6-button controller. You had medium punch, heavy punch, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick. You had all those in 2 rows, and they'd be like, that for already you got 2 more buttons than you do in Mortal Kombat. So like on its face value, there's already more complexity. The next level is character archetypes. In Mortal Kombat, you have Sub-Zero, he has this ice move and he can freeze you, and then you're stuck for 2 minutes with your thumb up your ass while he just does what he wants. Whatever. Scorpion has a spear. He's a little bit faster. Sub-Zero is a little bit slower. And then you have Liu Kang. He's got a fireball. There's characters with little mechanics like that make the character them as who they are. But Street Fighter is a little different in that it introduced archetypes like, this character is what's known as a Shoto, or this character is what's known as a charge character, or this one is known as a grappler. So what I'm saying is like, it's kind of like a more complex game of rock, paper, scissors. Like one character archetype will be better against another and weak against another. Pretty easy to understand. What it is mostly about is like when you're actually fighting, there's just another level of, is he going to throw a fireball or is he going to do a wake up dragon punch? Dragon punch is essentially like forward, down, forward punch or whatever as a Shoto character. It's that jumping, spinning uppercut move. It's something that doesn't really happen in Mortal Kombat because in Mortal Kombat they were kind of just going for outrageousness, I would say, as opposed to just how do we make a game that has so much scalability in terms of skill levels with different players. Street Fighter is just basically, for all intents and purposes, working on another level. I don't know how to put it better than that. But Guilty Gear, I would say, is a game that is much more evolved from the Street Fighter school of fighting game controls and whatnot, which you have. It's going to be that same kind of universe where you have those character archetypes, you have those different kind of special moves that they would have based off of that. But also, Guilty Gear is just 1,000 times faster. And they also include what's known as air dashing, which you figure you know what a dash is. Your character, you hit this way twice, you're going to run that way or hop that way. You'll get there faster as if you were just walking there. You can do that shit in the air in Guilty Gear. And in fact, you can fly all over the place. It's what's known as an anime fighter, which is to say it's that kind of technicality. It's there, but it's more based around being pretty explodey, arcadey fun.
Yeah, one thing I should say is that like I'm sure if I were to actually research fighting games a little bit more, I would probably find some obscure one that I actually would like more than any of the others, and it would probably be some dumb anime bullshit.
I can help.
I swear there was one called I don't remember the name of it, but it looked like it was really fast. Like it reminded me a little bit more of Smash Bros. The way that the characters were able to run and jump around, and the characters were a little bit smaller on the screen because they could just move around a lot faster, you know. And but it was still like the 2D drawn sprites and stuff. And I want to say it was either PS1 or PS2, but I think it was PS1 even.
We're not talking about Guilty Gear, right?
No,
okay.
No. I want to say it's called Arcana Heart, but I don't think that that's actually it. I think that's just some other game that I have in my head.
I was gonna say it could be Darkstalkers, or I mean, do you remember like what it looked like?
It was super anime. The characters were like schoolgirls. I'm pretty sure one of them like shot a bunch of bombs out of her or something, or maybe missiles. Like it was ridiculous.
It sounds like it would be. Well, I know there's a modern game now called Skullgirls, which is.
Well, that's an indie game, right?
I don't know if I'd call it indie. It's pretty big. But I would say, if you're talking about just straight up crazy anime fighters, I would think Darkstalkers is the first thing that's going to come to mind, because everyone has probably seen the character Morrigan.
Yes, I know about Morrigan.
That's what she's from. Same as wow, how am I forgetting her name? The cat girl. I want to say it starts with an N, but yeah, that's Darkstalkers. Just straight up nothing but anime girls though in a fighting game. I'm not recalling one off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I think they were specifically like school students. But anyway.
Oh, hang on. If you say it's school students, is it rival schools?
I don't know.
If it was a 3D fighter.
Unfortunately, like I don't think I'm gonna remember it if you say the name. So it's dumb to even bring up, really. But the point was that like I'm sure there's some fighting game out there that I would like more than Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or whatever, so I'm not even sure. And honestly, like the real answer to the question too, if I'm gonna get into fighting games, I just would like to play Smash Bros, man. I just want to get better at Smash Bros.
Well, so that makes sense, because I mean, like I said, you being as into Amiibo and Nintendo stuff in general, I totally get it. And Smash Bros is really fun. I only love the first one on N64. Anything else, it's just information overload for me. I can't focus on it enough. I die more to gravity than anything else. I just fall off the map all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so how often do you play it just one-on-one?
Never.
Like when you played it. See, that's the issue. When you get more than one-on-one in Smash Bros, it's an absolute clusterfuck, and no one knows what's going on.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But man, one-on-one, you know, with no items and stuff also, it's so good. I love the mechanics and everything with it. Love watching it too. It's one of those things, like, I don't watch a ton of it, but whenever I do, like, load up a stream of that, then I end up just, like, sitting there watching it for way too long and don't do anything else. But because yeah, I love the characters, I love the mechanics and all that, and it's a good time. But yeah, as far as like, so when I was talking about other fighting games though, with Mortal Kombat, I kind of meant the newer Mortal
Yeah.
Kombats because I've played the older Mortal Kombats and I know exactly what you're talking about as far as them being those games, you know. The newer ones seem super solid though and pretty smooth also.
They are, and this is
Um,
actually why I said, for better or worse, Mortal Kombat will always be Mortal Kombat, because it is still a game where the control scheme is basically the same as the original. Um, you have a couple more mechanics like X-ray moves, and obviously combos are now. Oh my god! Like combos weren't a thing for a long time until Street Fighter accidentally invented them. Combos became a thing in Mortal Kombat. I want to say they tried to implement them. Well, they did them in 3, like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but it was just kind of like, oh, well, you just got 2 hits. Nice combo. It wasn't really like, well, you can definitely get to the point where you can hit someone and then be done with them when they're dead, for sure. But, like, in general, combos, I think, really came into play, at least came into their own, I should say, in the 3D era for Mortal Kombat. But anyway, I digress. New Mortal Kombat is very polished in terms of how it used to be. Mortal Kombat 9 got me to buy a PS3. It is very good. The single player, I'll get to single player in a second. But yes,
yeah.
NetherRealm games in general, Injustice, Mortal Kombat, namely Mortal Kombat 9, Mortal Kombat X. I haven't tried 11 yet. I'm still boycotting it because they haven't put Reptile in it. Anyway,
Wait, Reptile isn't in the new Mortal Kombat?
nope. And that's why I'm not buying it.
Why not?
Because he's a character which no one has ever cared about.
What? He
Yeah.
was I remember him being my brother's main like
He's
when we
my
were
main.
younger and we played cuz of course I've played Mortal Kombat, right? When I was younger and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother being like he was like the one of our group of friends I felt like that kind of like got the game, and
Which game?
understood how to do more. I think mostly we played Trilogy, I want to
Okay,
say.
good,
Mortal
good,
Kombat
yeah.
Trilogy.
Honestly, that is the best you can do. On PS1, best you can do in terms of early Mortal Kombat. That was my favorite shit ever to play as a kid. Yes.
Yeah, and like I felt like he was the only one that grasped the idea of like the moves and when to use them and stuff, as opposed to just kind of button mashing. And he kicked all our asses with Reptile.
Yeah, because
Um,
Reptile's what's known in Mortal Kombat. It's easier to understand as Reptile is known as a juggler. He's nowhere near as much of a juggler as a character like Rain is, but he's definitely focused around his force balls in certain games, and you want to
yeah,
get those uppercuts in when you can because those are high damage.
that's what he did to us. He did the fast ball and then he did the slow ball, and we
Yep.
would bounce on both of them, and then he'd uppercut us, and half our life was gone.
Half of it was gone. Yep, very simple, and that's actually a thing. Okay, so. God damn it! I could touch on so many subjects in fighting games, but Mortal Kombat, I generally credit with my stunted growth in terms of how I learned to play fighting games, because Mortal Kombat specifically teaches you, keep them out of your space, use special moves, combo when you can. That sounds like very basic knowledge to anyone who may understand what a fighting game is generally like, but like in Street Fighter, it's totally different. You got fireballs, you got special moves, but like that's not your focus by any means. Those are like your tools when you need to know when you need to put in the frame bullshit aside. They're not the focus. You want to make sure you're doing as much damage as you can, obviously, but you're going to do it in a way that is not focused around special attacks. You're going to do it in ways that are like, say I'm Zangief, because I'm a Zangief man. I'm a grappler player. I'm going to focus on keeping the medium range between us very short. I want to be as close to you as I can, because I'm going to have trouble dealing with you if I'm not right next to you. I'm going to be doing everything I can to be doing command grab inputs, which are, it's like a normal grab, except it's like a special move as a grab, which I'm already going against my point of don't use special moves as your thing, but like that's Zangief's thing. He wants to get in close, and when he gets his hands on you, he's going to do a lot of fucking damage. Other characters will be like zoners. they're going to be the most frustrating people to deal with for me because I need to be close, and their specialty is keeping me at a distance. So they're going to be they're like the fireball heavy characters, the ones who have maybe a teleport move or such. All things that Mortal Kombat has, doesn't use them in the same way. The new Mortal Kombat though, 9X specifically, they are sharp, they are fast, they are tight. They can be a little dial-a combo at times, which means, input your buttons and 30 seconds later it'll play out. Little exaggerated there, but they can be that at times, but they're still very sharp. And I recommend them to anyone who wants to play fighting games in general because they're very fun. It's all Mortal Kombat used to be. It's all the gore, the ridiculousness, all the visual things that would attract you to that kind of series, but with actual competitiveness to it. But I will say, if you learn NetherRealm games, you're going to be good at NetherRealm games.
Yeah, totally.
You're not going to be good at anything else unless you're just very talented.
Yeah, and I think that carries over to a lot of other genres as well. Like, I think a long time ago we were kind of talking about, I was comparing fighting games a bit to rhythm games, kind of being similar, where like you can get good at one and then you're really good at that one, and maybe it'll give you like the mindset that will get you to be able to get good at another one a little bit faster, but you're still starting from square one when you go to another one. You just kind of maybe learn a little bit faster because you know a little bit more what to expect.
Maybe it's not like, maybe it's not so much that like, because what you just said makes sense for any game, right? If I get really good at Castlevania, well, how good am I going to be at Mega Man? The answer, I can tell you from experience, is not good at all. I fucking suck at Mega Man. I couldn't even get past the first level after beating Castlevania. But with fighting games, it's such a more focused experience. I'll get onto this point next, but single player is generally not something a lot of people go for in fighting games anymore. It's all about, is it online? Does it have good rollback netcode? Does it have a good character selection? Are the characters quote unquote balanced? All this sort of thing. And then we're getting like bonuses elsewhere when it comes to story mode now, but when it comes to the gameplay, when you suck at fighting games, it hurts a lot more than being bad at other games, I feel like, because there is you and one other person, and it especially hurts worse when you're sitting right next to them, and it's like, if they're the kind of person that doesn't want to teach you how to get to their level, they're going to be the kind of person that is going to sit down with you, roll you for like an hour straight. You're going to be pissed off. You're going to throw the controller away, and they're going to be happy because you got pissed off, and it's not a good time. But like when you think about it, the scalability of like how, damn it, I'm struggling to get the words out of my head here, but like the scalability of, I'm bad at this game because I'm so good at this game and I focused all of my attention in this one. I feel like it's a little harder to notice in fighting games because in fighting games you're just the same thing every time. You're one person versus another person generally. And the differences are all going to be a lot more subtle in how the different mechanics play out. Like maybe in this game has what's known as negative edge. Well, what does that mean? That means when I press a button, nothing happens. But I can hold that button as long as I want to. And when I let it go, whatever I'm going to do at the time that I have my D-pad inputs, whatever I'm doing at the time, that button's going to come through as a punch. So you can just punch and let it go, or you can hold it and then like just kind of let it cook a little bit. That is something that is going to be an entirely, that's a game changer, honestly. Street Fighter 4 has that, and I don't think any other Street Fighters have that, except for the exception of 5, where like one character called Birdie has some negative edge style moves, but that's a character by character basis in a way that they chose to make the character interesting, not overall unique to the game.
Struggling to grasp what you just described.
What I'm saying is fighting games are much more painful when you're bad at them because it's a much more simple experience than a lot of games.
Specifically the negative edge thing. What do you mean?
Negative edge. Okay, so heavy punch. I just throw that, but I
You
don't let
press
it
a
go.
button and you punch.
Yeah, well, you press a button and nothing happens until you let the button go.
Okay, why does that matter?
So when I walk up to you and I say, okay, I'm gonna punch you, and then you go, all right, well, I'm gonna block it. Well, what happens if instead of punching you, I just held it down and then kept my finger on that button and started
Uh-huh.
fighting you with the other buttons with that one finger
Okay.
pressed down? Now I've
Yeah.
got a cross up or a mix up I'm doing. High, low, 50-50. You're guessing what I'm going to do, trying to block what I can do. I'm going up and down, hitting you left, right, and then maybe you get something off on me. Maybe you find that I dropped a combo somewhere in there. And then all of a sudden, when you have the frame advantage and you're about to do an attack, say if I have enough space and enough frames to work with, I can now do a quarter circle forward movement and now let that button go that I've been holding on to the whole time, and out comes a
Uh-huh.
fireball, just like simple as hell.
What's the point of doing that instead of
The
just pressing the button when you would have otherwise released it?
To keep the opponent guessing.
But why is that how it controls though? Why wouldn't you just quarter circle forward and then press the button like always?
So
Why did you have to hold it down for 30 seconds?
well, you don't have to hold it down, and holding it down
Right.
offers no benefit other than the fact that you have to put in less inputs later. Does that make sense? You're gonna get something out faster.
It just sounds like a pain in the ass to do the same exact thing as pressing a button, except instead you had to hold it and then release it.
And this is
There's
what
no
I'm
difference.
this is
I
what
don't
I'm
get
ta-
it.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying it's a lot more focused and experience. This seems like such a minor detail, but when you actually get in the groove of how the game works, you'll kind of realize real fast, like, oh shit, where did that come from? That was bullshit.
Okay.
And then there's like, well, okay, I won't get into that. But what I was gonna say next was talking about single player in fighting games. Single player is the reason most people played games in general, like no matter what the genre. And then you get fighting games, and single player all of a sudden is, well, now you have a 2-player experience catered to be a 1-person experience. So what you have in generally is like arcade ladders. You have like a whole bunch of people you fight in one area, and they get harder as they go. But single player in fighting games is becoming it's becoming a rare occurrence, unfortunately, because of what I said earlier, where people are just more multiplayer focused now. In fact, I have fighting games that I love right now that I haven't even touched the single player on yet. But historically, single player games have been fantastic, and this is actually something I credit Mortal Kombat with. I only got Mortal Kombat 9 because the story mode was so intricate. It looked like they redid the entire Mortal Kombat 1 through 3 storyline in all its beautiful ridiculousness that makes no sense to each other, plot holes everywhere. It's just a big fun experience, and you're seeing it play out in one single contiguous game, in one single story mode, and my god, it's just fantastic. And
Yeah,
it's hard to find that now.
So this one I actually know a little bit about. Because one thing else that I wanted to say about Mortal Kombat 9 was I loved the redesigns of all the characters, where like they gave all the ninjas a different look instead of just being color swaps. And hey, maybe they did that a long time ago, but I went straight from Mortal Kombat Trilogy to Mortal Kombat 9. I didn't really see anything in between. But so yeah, so the story mode in that one is like there's a story happening with cutscenes, and then every once in a while it goes into a fight where you are this character,
Mm-hmm.
you fight against this character, and when you win, the story progresses. And then the next time that a fight happens, maybe you're a different character and there's another character, right? It's not like you don't choose a character and then you play the story as them. Instead,
Correct.
it's like here's the story, and at some point you're gonna play as these characters fighting these characters as those fights happen in the story. And I thought that was really cool.
Yes. It does a good job of putting you in the shoes of every character to like force you to kind of get an idea of what every character is going to play like. I would still say that there are not really true archetypes in Mortal Kombat, but Mortal Kombat has its own sort of thing where, like I said, juggler this guy's every character is just a little bit more unique to other characters in general in Mortal Kombat. But yeah, single player was good in Mortal Kombat 9. Mortal Kombat X, it followed along the same path. It did a really good job of doing that too. And as far as I know, I think the Injustice games did that as well. Injustice being the DC Comics version of essentially Mortal Kombat without the gore. It's just DC Comics with it. Very good games, though. I do recommend those. But yeah, single player in other games is a lot more like Mr. Cole in our chat here saying with the arcade modes. We have games that you just they're meant to be games that are in arcades, but like they're just ladders. They're not going to be complex stories. They're not going to be cutscenes. They're not going to be QTEs. They're going to be just solely focused on, do you have the skill? Do you have what it takes to get to the top? Because it's an arcade game. The whole point is to get as many quarters out of out of your allowance that week as possible. So they made it hard. They made it to where, God damn it, and a lot of games did this, but my God, the computers that control single player mode opponents will do something a lot of the times just reading your inputs. The game just takes your inputs and the character goes, okay, this is exactly how to react to that in 10 microseconds. They have the answer to whatever you're going to do as soon as you're going to do it. And the way to curb that was just to slow the reaction time. So if you just sit there and if you just play defensively, what's known as turtling in fighting games, the computer might actually, especially if you put no inputs in at all, the computer will actually just sit there freaking out for a second. Like the computer will do nothing. He'll like jump, he'll move forward, he'll move back, he'll do an attack or something to try and bait you. And then like he'll just not do anything. Just stand there. And maybe he'll try and approach, and if you just do something as simple as a light punch, this is I'm taking this from a friend of mine who this is his developed strategy and how to actually be good at fighting games versus play. He learned how to play fighting games this way. He learned how to be good fighting other people by freaking out CPUs and cheesing opponents till he gets to the end of the line, So yeah, you have the actual tailor-made single player experience, and you have the arcade ladder, which boring. And unfortunate too, because like there's a lot of like cutscenes, like not cutscenes, but just ending like, "Ha, you lost. Now I'm gonna go do this." Little like cutesy little scenes that actually do explain the story of the game if you can get through it.
Yeah. And then the other kind, I think I already bitched about this a bunch on a previous episode, but that Persona 4 fighting game is one that I've actually played. And that one did it like the worst, where it had a story like the Mortal Kombat has a story, but instead of doing it where you just watch the story and then you play the fights as they happen, instead it's like you choose a character at the start, and every character has the exact same story. You're just that character instead. And you gotta listen to all the dialogue and all the same story beats, and, they just fight a couple different people throughout, and it was super lame.
Yeah, that's... God damn it. So I could use that as a segue into the game I was going to talk about if you want to tonight.
Yeah. So, right, we haven't mentioned Tekken at all.
Yeah. Tekken 7 is a modern fighting game, not retro. We don't talk about retro games in this podcast. It's okay. I'm going to give praise to this game because it is actually, the combat in it is very what I remember Tekken to be like. My experience with Tekken, I only played Tekken 2, and I had a demo disc for Tekken 3 as a kid. So we're talking about just straight up 3D area control, where you're not going to have as much to work with, say, like in a Street Fighter game. You got a fireball, you got a Tatsumaki, you got a command grab, you got all this stuff. You'll have that stuff in Tekken. You won't have fireballs or anything like that. You'll have like complex. I would say the grab systems are definitely more complex. Because you have two different kinds of like base grabs that are not directional, as opposed to 1. And you also have, in Tekken specifically, you have the concept of this character is left-handed or this character is right-handed. So their attacks are going to be maybe a little bit more proficient from the square and X side versus the triangle and circle side. Triangle and circle being right punch, right kick, left punch, left kick being square and X. So you kind of have to figure out the character in what they're proficient at. And then you also have to go through, in general, archetype is not the right word because I wouldn't say Tekken has a whole lot of archetypes either, but they definitely have grapplers. They definitely have characters that, they definitely have Shotos now that Tekken 7 has Akuma in it, which, okay, man, Akuma's intro into Tekken 7 is probably the coolest thing about that game. And that's not talking bad on Tekken 7. It's just that's how well done that was. Akuma, if you don't know, was originally a hidden boss kind of character in Street Fighter. Imagine like Ryu, but faster, more aggressive, less health, and a lot more higher. He's a glass cannon kind of character. They put him in there. So if you like Street Fighter, you can play a Street Fighter style character in 3D, and this is a great practice that I'm so happy games are adopting more now. They're going into other IPs and then having guest starring characters in there. So like it's like, hey, do you like Street Fighter? Well, maybe you like Tekken. Come try Tekken. Here's a Street Fighter character. So I love that. But here's the story mode. The story mode's fantastic. Do you have you ever seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
No.
Okay.
Every time I hear about it, though, it sounds like something I need to see.
Yeah. So, Jonathan Joestar. No, sorry. He's the first JoJo. That's kind of the protagonist. Joseph Joestar, son of Jonathan Joestar. Once he gets older in season 3, same voice actor as Heihachi Mishima. Which is fucking fantastic because it's kind of hilarious to hear that character. Oh, by the way, same voice actor, Japanese voice actor for Jet Black in Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
But yeah, the story focuses on the Mishima storyline rather than the whole kind. Well, I guess Tekken's centered around the Mishima storyline, but this is one thing I didn't like. It has the main storyline where imagine you're playing Mortal Kombat 9. That's the story mode you're used to. It's basically that, where you have a single narrative. It starts and it ends at a certain point, and the story takes you through and forces you to play different characters as you go to explain the events and what's happening. Yada yada. And then what it does is the majority of the game's characters, their story is just literally one-off fights, one-off fight missions. And that's not that bad on its own. And I thought it sounded pretty cool, actually, because I wanted to see uniqueness to everyone's story. What I got instead, though, was here is... Okay, it graphically already plays this out to you, because here's one book. This is the Mishima storyline. Now here's the other book. This is every other character. So the Mishima storyline starts off with two dots per page, or per line per page. So the same book mirrors. So there's two characters. How's that tail, by the way? There's two characters, and they are kind of like aligned against each other, so to speak. And the game artificially manipulates the story to be like, oh, I was going to do this at this point in time. Why are you here, you fucker? I'm going to kill you right now. All right, that's it. That's the fight. Now, once you play that thing as character A, okay, well, now you want to know the story of character B. Why was he there? What's his motivation? What's cool about this scene here? You go in there, and the universe changes. You're there for either a different reason or you have a different side of the perspective of the narrative, but the same outcome is not going to happen. It's dependent on who wins the fight. So the story here changes based off of who wins the fight in two separate experiences of the same exact scene. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to play King now because I love King. He's He's the big muscle wrestler dude with the panther head who like growls like a cat. He's versus Jack 7. Jack 7's this robot character. High damage output, kind of slower. He beats him. Okay, cool. Here's the story. What is my motivation to play the other guy? What's the motivation? Okay, and the answer is humor. They actually did a good job of making the ending scenes funny as fuck, but like in a very cutesy little, insignificant to the story, very Final Fantasy Japanesey way of telling something. Cartoonish without being a cartoon, I guess I could say.
Yeah.
So the storyline, the mainline Mishima storyline, adequately arcadey, easy enough to not take seriously, and very dramatic and honestly really cool to see rebuilt along all the years of the game's retelling, just like Mortal Kombat 9. But god damn it, the rest of the game, aside from the multiplayer, is just like, why bother? Like other games like Street Fighter will incentivize you, like you get fight money, which is just the game's in-game, insanely overinflated in-game currency on how to unlock characters, costumes, art, etc. I haven't seen anything like that in Tekken yet. I haven't played it enough, but yeah. It's combat's good, but man, I just hate the fact that story modes are kind of really dying. in fighting games.
Yeah, well, wasn't it Street Fighter V where when it released, it didn't have a story mode?
Didn't have a story
and
mode.
They added it later. Like they were working on it, but then they released the game before they were done with it.
Man, Street Fighter V is just, God. Street Fighter V was nothing but a horror show from the very start, and it's a great game now, but it took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And I see what they're doing. Street Fighter V came out kind of around the time Killer Instinct came out, I want to say, which is the time where the companies that are making these games really started to experiment with what they can do. People took it in a very negative, like, oh, this is just like another EA money grab kind of way of when KI released, and it was like, I think you got one character. You could download the game for free, but you could have one character. And it was like, okay, well, some people know what character they like. This is actually straight from Ken Lobb, actually, the creator of KI. He was like, some people like one character and they play that one character. And we were trying to cater to those kinds of people where maybe they wanted to pay just like the cheapest they could for a baseline story system, and they got what they wanted. And if they wanted more later, then they could pay for it. Nobody took it that way though. They said, what the fuck is this 10% done game being released for? Why is this happening? But at the time, I think that was the first time anyone had ever done that. I think everyone at the time was used to a full-ass fighting game coming out. And keep in mind, this is before, before this part in KI. This is before those day one patches were a thing where it's like, okay, well, we got a shitty game on day one. Okay, here comes the 12 terabyte patch day two, before all that. So people were just used to a whole-ass game coming out and then that. So I guess Street Fighter said that, and so maybe people just want to play online. What if we just give them no story mode? I don't know. It was not a good decision in my opinion, but I say that, and I have yet to complete the story mode for Street Fighter V.
I've never liked how Street Fighter V looked. Because I thought that Street Fighter 4 had a really good, and I'm talking specifically art style. I thought that Street Fighter 4 had a really great art style. It kind of looked like Street Fighter 2, but in 3D, kind of. But then 5 looks like 4, except they like airbrushed everybody. Like they airbrushed everybody's muscles and stuff to be more defined and all that.
And they upped the contrast of all the color. Like the saturation is blown out.
Yeah, so I always just think it's a very ugly game when I see it.
It
and
is.
I'm sorry to be so shallow, but like it's made me never interested in it at all.
Hey man, I'm gonna say this right now. Here's a lukewarm take. Because fighting games are such a focused experience where there's not much to them past you're not going to miss the forest for the trees, is what I'm saying. When you make those games look insanely beautiful and pretty and like, God, just color exploding everywhere. In the 2D sprite CRT era, that shit was the bomb. That is what you wanted at all times because you wanted that visual overload. In the world of 3D games, man, you got to work with a lot more depth perception. You got to work with a lot more resolution. And honestly, just taking the characters, making them seem just like high contrast, high saturation, color bleeding nightmares. You're right. It's ugly as fuck. But you can actually take a look. And Ken is the worst offender of all. Like, Ken, his hair is stupid. His face is entirely different. Like, there's no reason his face should look like that. He doesn't look like that in any other Street Fighter game, face-wise. Ken's hair looks so fucking stupid. But then if you look at, like, a character released recently in season, like, even season 3 to season 5, they're so refined. Like, this is always probably going to be true, unfortunately, but, like, the girl characters are gonna look more refined. They're gonna have 10 times as many outfits, and they're gonna be fan service. They're gonna be side boob, jiggle physics, everything. They're gonna have everything like that. But at the same time, if you look at the design of them, there's so much more work put into them than the earlier characters. So they've learned a lot from their mistakes. I can't fault them for that. But single player is going away.
Yeah. Meanwhile, all of these Arc System games, ever since that Guilty Gear Zerd, I think was what it was called.
I think it's pronounced Exard. I don't know how you really pronounce it though.
But ever since that game, where it was like, all right, so they're doing 3D, but they're gonna make it look like it's hand-drawn 2D, you know, where it loads up and it looks like one of those older Arc System games, or what they've looked like to that point, where the characters are these 2D beautiful hand-drawn sprites that are big and gorgeous, but then you do like a special attack and all of a sudden the camera just like rotates a little bit to show a different angle, and you're like, wait a second, what? And then like the whole animation plays out and it still looks hand-drawn in 2D, but you start to realize that it's actually 3D.
Yeah.
They've just shaded it and done the frame rates and the smear frames and all that stuff in a way where it looks hand-drawn. That shit is so cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
are you talking? Yeah. So you're talking about the Exard, right? Like, you're not talking about Strive, the newest game.
Well, I think from what I've seen, other Arc System games ever since that one have done the same thing. Like that Dragon Ball Z game did it. That what's that Super Weeby one with my waifu in it?
This game right here, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus.
That's the one, yeah, that one.
This is so this is actually like the lesser of it. Like, most people I would say Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle or whatever is probably like, they're all ArcSys games, and they're all doing exactly what you say. The gorgeous 3D backgrounds with the 2D sprites that just animate so well. That here's the coolest thing about it.
But they're not 2D sprites. Oh, that's the thing.
Well, okay, so I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Like, the characters are 3D modeled.
Yep.
They just make it look like they're hand-drawn so that then the camera moves and it turns out that they're actually 3D. It's incredible.
Yeah. I damn it. You know, I'm kind of mad I don't know enough about that to say anything about it, but I do know what you're talking about. There's a big difference in Marvel versus Capcom 2 or 3 rather. And Street Fighter Alpha, Capcom versus SNK 2, Dreamcast games. They needed that extra horsepower of what the Sega Naomi could do. Like, the Neo Geo couldn't do this. It had these beautiful 3D backgrounds, like fucking like trucks are like driving over here, a boat pulls over here and like lowers its like ladder or whatever. All 3D rendered, beautiful 2D sprites, purely 2D sprites. But yes, these are different. These are not like you can see the pixel edge of your character. These are not like Exactly what you mean. And then there's
Yeah.
another level of like things that look like they're 3D but are actually 2D sprites, like KOF 13 by SNK. Oh my God, they lost so much money because it didn't sell as well as it should have. But like they put so much money and time and effort into the sprites of that game. I don't know. You could probably look it up now, but like if you saw like the way that these sprites looked, there's just so much resolution to them that no game would have gotten that much detail in the 480p, 480i era. Scan lines, etc. It wouldn't have mattered because the scan lines would have rendered the detail on these sprites. You wouldn't have seen them. They're that high detailed, and they're definitely 2D. But these, you're right, they feel 3D. And I do. It's kind of hard to say that I can recall a moment where I've seen that camera angle change because I don't play Grand Blue enough. I wish I did. They really need to add rollback netcode to that game. Holy shit. They have it, but for other games, wait, hang on. I can't remember if this one was not rollback or not. I think it was delay based. Anyway, fighting games are so high action and in the moment that I don't know if I can like point to a time where I've gone, oh shit, hang on, where it just broke my focus because it's so fast paced. So
Oh yeah. I think it's mostly noticeable with like the big special attacks or during like the winning animations and that kind of thing. But mostly during like the special attacks, I feel like is when I see it. But yeah, the first time I saw it on Xrd was like, oh my God, it just felt like they reinvented fighting games, you know? I was so blown away by it.
And I would say Guilty Gear Strive, the one that's coming out soon, they've had 2 betas now. It's probably taking that concept to the extreme because they definitely are 3D models, and when you watch video of them fighting, it's definitely 3D. But it's in the way that like they're shaded. The art itself.
It's the shading and it's the low frame rate of their animation.
That's actually what I was going to say. So you're playing a 60 frame rate game, and you want it in fighting games. You want to make sure you have a hard lock at 60. It's important for actually interpreting frame data when you're fighting. But the actual look of these games, while like the backgrounds and everything will look fluid and like movement will look real, the animation is like you're watching anime. It's like at a frame rate of like 23 frames a second. So everything you're doing is coming out smooth, but the visual effect of it makes it seem like you're watching an actual cartoon.
And they even have like smear frames and stuff for like large motions. Yeah. So like that shit is 3D modeled, but because they did it that way, it looks like they hand drew everything. Man, it's so cool.
And actually, I can't remember. I'm looking at the back here of this. I don't see an Unreal logo anywhere. I don't know if it's done in the Unreal Engine.
I would be kind of surprised if ArcSys games were in Unreal. I don't think they are.
They aren't. But there are other fighting games that obviously are, namely Mortal Kombat. But this too. This is Samurai Showdown. This is one of those games where instead of doing what we just talked about and making it seem like it's 2D but it's 3D, this is the game where they were just straight up like, hey, Mortal Kombat's doing like super good right now. Like it's like competitive wise, like stylistic wise, maybe that's a direction we should explore. They tried it for KOF 14. It came out looking hideous. That is a really ugly game. Before that was 13, the beautiful sprite version. So KOF made a very poor transition to 3D, or I should say 2.5D, because that's what I'd like to call it when it comes to like Mortal Kombat. I was like, oh my god, fucking love 3D graphics, but classic 2D fighting style, sign me in. That's what they did for this, and they just straight up said, okay, we're gonna see if we can try and make this old arcade game that has very cartoony graphics, very strong saturated colors and such. We're going to see if we can turn that into full ass 3D and make it look good. Make it look like it translates right. And in my opinion, I don't think they've made a game that looks as good as Samurai Showdown yet, at least from SNK's perspective. But like in terms of like full ass 3D transition from a 2D series, Samurai Showdown has just done it the best in my opinion.
So the last time I heard Samurai Showdown, I feel like it was a Genesis game. Is
It,
that correct?
yeah, it got ported to Genesis. It's SNK, so it was a Neo Geo game before it was anything else.
Okay.
But yeah, it got SNES. Samurai Showdown was pretty popular. It got SNES, Genesis. I don't think it got PC Engine, but I do think it got another port on another console as well. But none of them are going to be as good as the Neo Geo, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So was that it though? Did they just bring it back 20
Well,
years later?
no. It was I think it went to 5. It went from Sam Show 1 to 5, and then there was a couple different versions of 5. There was 5 Special, I think, is the most commonly played. A couple of years ago, someone had uncovered a previously unreleased version of Sam Show, and I think they released it as 5 Perfect, the ROM, but I don't know if anyone's actually had the legal rights to do anything with it. Like, if they could, oh my God, dude, if they could take that game and like put it on, like, like an EEPROM programmer and put it on its own MVS cartridge and have that in a real Neo Geo arcade cabinet, that would be sick.
So what was Samurai Showdown 5 on then?
Neo Geo,
If they,
all Neo Geo.
so that was still okay. So there were a lot of them, but they were all old.
See, this is the beautiful thing about Neo Geo was the hardware evolved with the cartridge. You had all your
Okay.
you had all your megs on your cartridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could have the same hardware play vastly different, like beautiful kind of games.
We can, speaking of that, we can circle back to Sega for a moment
Sure.
in general. What was the deal with the Master System and how there's like the Mega cartridge and the 4 times Mega cartridges? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I want to say I've seen the logo. God, their marketing was all over the place on their cases, but I want to say I've seen that.
Yeah, some of the Master System cartridges claim that they're Mega cartridges, and then they even go up to like 4 times Mega cartridges, and I don't know what that means. But let me tell you, okay, so as far as my experience with Sega goes, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, a friend of mine sold me his Master System with like 20 or 30 games. Probably like 20 games,
That's
I think.
badass.
And yeah, I was like, all right, here we go. I got a cardboard box. We got a Master System and a whole bunch of games. Cool. I played every one of them one day. I popped every one of them in and just tried them out. I hated almost every one of them. They were trash video games with a garbage controller, and I don't know why anyone would like the Master System at all. It seemed like a big pile of shit to me.
So I can't speak for it because my intro to Sega was the Genesis, which I think is the case for most people in the United States. But in South America and Europe specifically, the Master System did very well. I think better than in Japan.
So my biggest issue was the D-pad, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's terrible.
Because the first game I played was Alien Syndrome, and like that game seemed kind of cool, right? It was all right, but the controls were terrible because of the D-pad on the system.
Did you know that game has a Wii port? Like not port, but Wii remake.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it's a cheap little Sega game you can buy on Wii, but Alien Syndrome was big enough to where back in the day, a big enough popular game where apparently they felt like reviving it.
Yeah, it has an NES version also. It's a Tengen game, so
okay.
I don't know if that means it's unlicensed.
Probably
I forget. I think Tengen was unlicensed, but yeah, there is a Tengen Alien Syndrome game, which on NES, which controls a lot better and generally is a little bit better of a game. But yeah, there were a couple other standouts though. Like there was a game called Cloudmaster that was like a shmup. That one was kind of cool. And then California Games was surprisingly kind of fun. I had some
What is
fun with a
California
couple of
game? Is
them.
that like a track and field kind of thing or?
Yeah, with
Oh,
like one of the games was like a frisbee game, I feel like. I don't really remember the details, but it was kind of all right. But
huh.
man, so many of the games were just like Garbo ports, Like Space Harrier is on there, but it's just like a
Yeah.
really terrible version of it.
Dude, I don't think Space Harrier looks good on Genesis. Why did they think that was appropriate to port? That was.
Yeah.
I think. Wait, hang on. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say the Master System Space Harrier was gimped enough to where it actually ran okay, but it still looked terrible.
Yeah, like all like the trees and stuff are like actual squares, with like a tree drawn in them and shit like that.
Oh,
Uh
can I just okay, so I had this weird dream once, and I have no idea where this mental image originated from. But I had a dream that I was in just playing some first person shooter game. I was the character. I have a flamethrower because, the most imbalanced weapon you could possibly add to a first person shooter game. Of course, I'm going to have it in my dream. I always wanted one. And I go to fire my flamethrower, and this weird Windows 95 error effect happens in that everything that would have been fire coming out of my flamethrower was replaced with, when an image fails to load in Windows 98 or Windows 95, you just see that white little page icon with the fold
oh,
at the
like
top right corner and an
and with
X.
the frowny face on it.
Or no,
Oh,
no,
it was a it
little
was an
red
X.
X. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Imagine that without the top corner paper folded, and the
Yeah.
X is actually just a little icon of a flame. So I had a
Okay,
bunch of
yeah.
paper coming out with it was digital paper coming out with fire tattooed on it. And I was
Mhm.
like, what the fuck is happening right now? So when you just said that, that just brought me straight to it. So I was like, when you see the wrong sprite in a game, like a sprite
Yeah.
that didn't have its transparency layer rendered or something. I don't know.
Right, and so you can see the box. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
just a
that's like
weird
what
thing.
Space Harrier was. You could see that everything was a square, and oh man, like one thing that I will admit though is like I didn't play these games a lot,
Yeah.
so maybe like it's one of those things where this is something that I come across a bit, which is that like it's harder to appreciate games when you get 20 of them at once.
Yes.
Like
Oh
if I
god.
got one game at once, maybe I would have given it a couple hours and I would have found something that I liked about it. I would have gotten better at the controls and then maybe it would have started to feel better and that kind of thing. But I was playing through them pretty quickly, so
That's a
maybe I missed a banger.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. I've never even thought about that before because when you're a kid, man, what kid gets a system in 20 games? Like,
Right.
even the rich kids at Christmas, I feel like weren't going to get a quarter of a whole library like that. It's something that like everyone had gone through, and it was like, when you were a kid, you got a video game, and that's it. You got your video game. You had to
Yeah.
find reasons to like it.
And I wonder how different that is for a lot of kids now, where like there are people who have big game collections that are having kids now. Those kids are going to get interested in games, and they have 200 games to pick from.
And
And
I
you
hate
kind
to
of
sound like the
wonder.
boomer here, but these kids probably have smartphones now. How much lower is their attention span versus ours as kids?
Well, yeah, that kind of thing I'm not sure about as far as like attention span goes. I don't want
That's
to
okay.
say that too much. The reason is because when I was younger, my dad specifically always like criticized how video games affected my attention span,
Yeah.
or so he thought. Everyone acted like video games were ruining my attention span, and I'm sitting here thinking, do you guys want to try a fucking battle in Final Fantasy Tactics? Like, can you guys sit down for 45 minutes
Oh
and
god,
suss
yeah.
out this battle? Nah, like this shit requires attention
That's
to
why
detail
that's why I
and
quit that.
micromanagement for
Yeah.
a long ass time. So, yeah. So I don't know how much that affects kids now. If the new thing is bad for them, I'm not sure. But yeah, but that I do wonder though if they have access to more games, how does that affect, the way that they perceive, playing each one? Like everyone, with Humble Bundles, you buy a Humble Bundle, you got 10 new games. Are you really gonna put a decent amount of time into all 10 of them,
Tell you what, I think I can actually answer this now that I think about it, because my first ever video gaming intro ever, Game Boy. I got it. I guess because it was a mobile game thing, it was just cheaper. But I got it with Super Mario Land, Race Days, which is a 2-in-1 game, Tetris, and Metroid 2: The Return of Samus, and Jurassic Park. I had 5 games. And I'm going to say right now, I haven't beaten any one of them.
Yeah,
I didn't beat a single one of those. I just had them and I played them until I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to this game now.
And I know the other week I started to say something about like about emulation of disk drives or whatever. What we were talking about, like
you're talking about ODEs, optical disc
yeah,
emulators.
yeah. And that's part of my thing with that kind of thing too, where like I personally am like don't get into that stuff
Yes.
because I don't want to just have a text list of 2,000 game titles. I want to like individually appreciate each game a little bit more personally,
Exactly, because I've everyone's been there when they look at Steam. They just I've doom scrolled my Steam library and said fuck it and went to bed.
Yep.
I don't want that for what I'm actually putting all this passion into.
Yeah, or like when if you have the what's it called on Switch, they have like all the NES and SNES games that you can play. And even that is a pretty small library,
Yeah.
but even that you load up and you're like, I don't fucking know. I guess I'll load up Demon's Crest and I'll play it for 5 minutes, and then when I die, I'm like, okay, I'll just pop back to the menu and pick a different game, instead of like getting better, right?
Yeah. Well, I will say though, in the Switch's defense with the classics, for some reason, it always has me. I'll try something, go, whatever, but I always come back to Twinbee. It just gets me back to Twinbee every time, and I want to play it over and over and over, and I get better at Twinbee.
Yeah. Well, my little Switch experience with that is that I loaded up Star Tropics and played it for, like 10 or 15 minutes and went, whoa, this is awesome. And then I got it on eBay and I bought a copy of Star Tropics and I'm playing it on my NES now.
Yeah. Well, also Star Tropics, that's way too many hours of a video game dedication for something that like, well, I mean, I guess it saves for you, so it's a moot point. But I was going to say it's a little bit too, like a lot of hours for a little quick session of, let me get into a couple retro games. What's in the Switch menu, I feel like Star Tropics is a little bit more of a commitment.
Yeah, like Breath of Fire, one of the Breath of Fires is on there, and Final Fantasy VI is that on there? Now I'm not sure. I might be confusing it with the SNES Classic, but either way, long-winded RPGs are on there also.
Yeah. And to go more to your point, I wanted to say that talking about doom scrolling my Steam library, I have to say one of the things I really begrudgingly like about the way we do things with buying physical copies, having them on a shelf, etc., is me going when I'm streaming, say, me going, hey guys, what if why don't I switch to this shit? Hold on a second. And then I have to stop the stream. I have to get out of my chair. I have to go to my shelf. I have to find the game that I hopefully sorted before and then pick it out, pull the disc out, yada, yada, the rest of the game. It's a lot like vinyl. Like, it's pretty much the same exact case to be made with vinyl, where, yeah, I could just scroll iTunes and listen to music that way or stream it. But if I want to force myself to have an experience, I'm going to go to the shelf, pick off the record I want to listen to, put it on the actual, remove the dust cover, remove the actual cloth, put the thing on there, move the needle to it, make sure the preamp is on, all this yada yada. You're making sure you are present for what you want to enjoy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Like it's kind of funny, just that, right? The extra steps of setting up and making it more of an ordeal
yeah.
also puts you in the mindset to enjoy it now because you're giving it more attention. Totally.
That's why I haven't bought a Mister. I want a
Hmm.
Mister, but I'm never going to use a Mister for what probably everyone else uses it for. I'm probably going to use Mister for just stopgaps. Like, I really want to get into Commodore 64 stuff.
Hmm.
Most Commodore 64s are in real rough shape now, and if you find them in good shape, I've heard they tend to need a little bit of attention here and there. They just need TLC as time goes on.
Yeah.
With a Mister, I don't have any connection to a Commodore 64. It's a bread box with a keyboard. I have a keyboard right here, and it feels damn good to type on. So
Yeah.
if I could have, the computer experience, the retro computer experience with the, they're even making a 486 core, man. You're gonna be able to play Windows 95 or Windows 98 Duke Nukem and shit on a Mister. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, yeah, see that's pretty cool. And like yeah, and you do bring up a really good point of like, let's say I wanted to play like Mr. Gimmick, you know. There's a game that's just like that's one of those, I don't know exactly how much it is, but I want to say that's one of those like $1,000 plus
Yeah.
games, you know. For something like that, it's like, I can save the money and play it on
Or
something like a
just
Mr.
EverDrives, yeah.
Um and just and you can still give yourself the experience of like really giving it your attention. You just got to do it, you know. Look up the manual online and give the manual a peruse, you know, and just
Yeah.
really make a point to appreciate it.
I was
That's
gonna
all.
say there's definitely a time period in which manuals become pretty fucking important to be included with the
Yeah.
games you find, for sure too. So that's another big part of the experience, is just having to go what the fuck for 2 hours straight, and then going to the book and then finding out on page 7, because you weren't going to read page 1 through 6, but you're going to find page 7 after you read page 9 and 10. But anyway, you find page 7 and you find out, oh, there's this thing I had to go back and get, god damn it. And
Yeah,
that's
that was me with Castlevania 2. I was stuck in that game
yeah.
forever before I finally looked at the manual and it says, "Oh, the guy, the ferry man at the river, he takes you to a different place if you have different shit equipped." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's what it was the
Yep.
whole time. Is the manual tells you to do that. Cool."
That shit puts hair on your chest, man. I played Castlevania 2 by going, I've heard this game is bullshit. I'm going to play through this just to get through the story, because apparently the story is really all there is to that game. So, you know what? Whatever. Let me look up game facts real quick. And then, well, it took me, all of 6 hours to beat a game that it took probably 8 weeks, a lot of ripped out hair, a lot of angry phone calls to Konami's like helpline with $4
Oh yeah.
minute charging. I'm not getting that hair on my chest, but I'm still I'm experiencing it
Castlevania
in a way.
2, it took me a lot longer than 6 hours to beat, yeah, because I did it like, well, I did it quote unquote blind, you
Blind,
know, where
yeah.
like, I didn't look anything up and I didn't know very much about the game, but I did know that at some point I was going to have to kneel in front of a wall for 10 seconds because everyone knows that, you know?
Yeah.
So that
Spoiler
part
alert.
of it so that part of it was spoiled, and that's supposed to be like the hardest puzzle, right? Um, but yeah, for me, the hardest puzzles turned out to be a couple other things, like, just having to do the right thing at the ferryman. There were some red herrings in that game, though.
Yes, there were,
Did
and
you?
also invisible holes in the floor
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
you had to throw a lot of holy water when you were in the
Mm-hmm.
in the castles and stuff. I thought Castlevania 2 was pretty fun. I really liked it.
Me too. I
Um
did, but
going to a I thought it was really cool for Castlevania to go to a system where you actually went to towns and you talked to people, because the story
mm,
is really cool of like, you're going to Castlevania to go hunt Dracula and there's all these monsters and stuff. So that's a cool world to be in as far as like talking to the people and what they say and that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And buying a new better whip from a hidden vendor and stuff like that. It was very immersive and very cool.
Definitely
Yeah.
felt like it had a lot more RPG-ness to it, and I loved that about it. But I definitely had the benefit of the doubt, knowing that it's already mistranslated. So trying to follow the story along the blind way wouldn't have worked. And I knew going in that there was lots of just bullshit left and right. So I think I probably got you and I probably have the most uncommon experiences with that game, where we just kind of like, back in the day, we didn't have all the suffering we went through to go through, to beat it. But it's an interesting perspective now, because I don't think anyone at the time ever expected people to be playing these games 30 years, 40 years on.
Yeah, that is funny to think about. And now, I wonder a lot, like 30 years from now, like where will video games be? Will
Hopefully functioning.
Yeah, right.
No more C-bomb, hopefully.
But yeah, like, because the whole paradigm could shift, right? Where it's like, what do you mean you play games on your TV? Like it could just be a totally different thing.
The way you said that, what do you mean you play video games on your TV? Like, as if it's coming from the old person who would be talking
Right.
to kids.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, I wasn't shit. It's just the way it just sounded funny. But with God, because where could that go? I mean, VR is only getting better.
Yeah, exactly.
Wearables are only getting better. But man, you're not going to be able to bring a 7.1 Dolby Atmos system with you everywhere you go. At least not for the next. God damn it! I guess I hesitate to say never, but maybe we'll just get an implant and we won't need ears.
Right, yeah. And as far as surround sound goes, I mean, headphones are getting better at doing like virtual surround sound and stuff, and then you can take 7.1 surround sound with you.
Yeah. I've never actually used that, have you?
Not really, no.
Or tried it. I've never had virtual surround. Like,
yeah,
these Sennheisers
like,
right here, not to get too far into gear, have a button. I told you this off stream before, but it has a button here that I'll hit, and what it does is it, quote unquote, increases the soundstage by virtually taking the loudspeaker away from your ear and making it sound like you're more in the room with something. But really all it manages to do is sound really echoey and terrible, and I hate it. So.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think one of the Sony headsets boasts about being like having virtual surround. I don't remember ever really getting all that into it. Returnal, though, talks a lot about 3D audio and how you're supposed to play that game with headphones. I never have, though. In fact, that game, most of the time I've been playing it has been, yeah?
It says you should play with headphones. Does it say that assuming that you don't have a surround sound system, or would a surround sound system be a better experience?
I guess I don't know. I think it assumes you don't have surround sound, but they've like worked on their headphone technology to make it so that if you're wearing headphones, it's going to sound like you have surround sound. However, 95% of my time playing that game has been out of my shitty built-in monitor speakers.
Oh no.
because of how I just because of how I play games right now on my computer desk, where like my PC is the one that has my PC speakers connected to it, and then so that means that my HDMI from the PS5 to my other monitor, I'm just going to use those speakers because I'm listening to a Twitch stream or something out of the computer, out of the PC speakers.
I feel like you and I very much can relate on there being 1,000 different things happening in our setups at any given point in time, and a lot of them may be unfinished.
Yeah. Like, right. I'm never happy with my setup.
Yeah.
Everything is always something that's meant to be temporary, but it's been there for 3 years before I know it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah, I have a row of consoles here on like a cube shelf, and then just, my God, the world's worst fire hazard of all these power cables alone, yes, but also video cables. I had to like wire this desk for power, and power alone took like an hour.
One thing I can show the video users real quick here is that my PVM is actually sitting on this is like one of those like $20 Amazon racks,
Yep.
that you assemble. This was supposed to be temporary. Um,
Well,
it
those
has
racks
been
hold a lot of
there.
weight, so
I hope so because this thing is real heavy and yeah, it was supposed to be a temporary solution, but now it's just been on there for a long time and I'm thinking, man, if this shitty rack collapses and like now my PVM crushes my consoles and stuff, oh man, I'll be devastated.
yeah, those wire racks. I got one. It's bigger than that, and I got it to put here to put all my consoles on. Turns out it's too big, and it was a waste of space. But they're rated to hold like I want to say like up to 300 pounds per shelf. Actually, they're pretty awesome.
Okay, all right.
But
All right.
let me ask this: how? Okay, if you were to say in your setup, you had it the way that you wanted it ideally, what's the audio look like? Or do you just use headphones?
So for streams, I just use headphones for everything all the time.
Me too.
I actually don't even have speakers down here anymore. And my PVM, I used to route the audio through so I could use that as the thing, but I actually started bypassing it because it's mono. And with the PC engine having stereo audio, now I don't want to downmix it anymore. So now
Yeah, I forgot you have a mixer where you actually handle audio externally. I just pull audio from my capture card actually.
Gotcha. I can't do that because there's a delay.
How much of a delay?
Too much.
Oh, there's an imperceptible delay on you would not. Sound is. You notice controller input. I use the FrameMeister in my setup currently, but you notice controller input only if you look at the CRT and the direct capture pass through side by side, and it's very small. So my thinking was, okay, well, the controller I can notice, but the sound being that couple milliseconds, if even off, it wasn't never going to bother me. So it was just one whole headache I wanted to avoid.
Yeah, for me, maybe it's my capture card. It is a USB capture card. But yeah, if I turn the sound monitoring on OBS, it's less than a second, maybe less than half a second, but it's like a quarter of a second, I want to say.
That's still a lot. Yeah. That's still, notice that.
It's real bad. And I've noticed, like, just with the way I play games, I've noticed that I use audio cues a lot. Like,
this is where I was going with that, actually. I was going to say audio is so important that people seldom really kind of give it a whole lot of consideration. I'm a streamer too, so also mostly the case is for me is because I'm at a desk anyway, so it's a very small area anyway. It wouldn't take a lot to get speakers sounding good in here, but I'd rather just because I'm a little hard at hearing, I'd rather be able to go full blast in my ears directly with a really good pair of headphones.
Yep.
But my goal is to do something that is going to be a little bit anachronistic and probably just irrelevant for retro gaming, which is to actually build a surround sound system. But for retro gaming, I mean, the most you really ever are going to get is stereo. PS2 wasn't capable of any more than stereo, I don't think, because it only outputs left and right audio.
I don't recall. Let me grab something.
You definitely could get, people used it to play movies at the time because of the DVD player, but like DVDs had surround sound at the time, I thought, right?
And it has an optical out.
Oh, the Slim has an optic. Oh, wait, hang on. Does the PS2 have optical audio? The fat PS2?
I don't know about the fat one because I don't have one anymore. But yeah, the Slim, it has optical out for audio on it. So
I don't want to unplug mine here, but I think just the Slim has a. I'm gonna kill myself later if I get it wrong. It's gonna be. I know it because I've used a PS2 so many fucking times setting up in different setups. It's gotta have the fucking Anyway,
I
it's
bet
I,
PS2 does have surround sound.
but I bet you, well, it's got to
I don't
have
know. I
some
don't know
way,
how much the
know?
I don't know how much the games actually used it, but I think it does.
Because movies had to get surround sound sometime. It couldn't have just been simulated surround with like a with the head unit itself at the time, right? It couldn't have just been simulated. I do feel like it
Yeah, I
had
don't.
surround. Anyway, you don't need surround for gaming. Well, for retro gaming anyway. But
Mhm.
I kind of want it just to have it for once.
Well, it's interesting how much surround you can get out of just left and right
Mm.
if you do it right, you know? Like when you um left to right gives you like an arc in front of you virtually, right? Of where something is, but then like you add a little reverb to it and now it sounds like it's behind you. And then as far as the 3D sound that I was talking about with Returnal, um, or with the PS5, that even does something where it's like they it pitches the audio up a little bit if it's above you, and it pitches it down a little bit if it's
Oh,
below you, which sounds really weird and
sounds
terrible.
disorienting. Yeah.
But like when you listen to the example, if you go into the PS5 settings, it's like, hey, play around with it, or set it to what you think sounds like it's right here. And it's like a sound of running water. And when you change it to up and down, you can tell that it's really just pitching it, right? But it sounds like it's moving up and down.
Hmm.
So if you consider like the panning plus like what you can do to make it sound behind you, I don't think it's actually reverb that makes it sound behind you. I think what they do is compress the highs and lows a little
Yeah.
bit in the equalization, and that makes it sound like it's behind you. And then also
Wow.
add in this up and down effect, and now with two speakers, it kind of sounds like you have surround sound.
That's That's crazy. I've never even thought about that. I'm not big into audio engineering yet, but compressing highs and lows specifically so that they would produce like artifacting almost. Maybe not that bad, but enough to where you can audibly hear the distortion, making it sound. When you put it in like one channel only, left or right, making it sound like it's actually behind you because it's kind of like the Doppler effect, but simulated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a neat concept I never even thought about. But yeah, man, I'm starting to like really just kind of get into the idea of room engineering a home theater audio setup for gaming specifically, and I don't know what percentage of my gaming is going to utilize it in a way that I care to even hear it, let alone play it. But it's going to be interesting. I
Yeah.
was curious to see if you had a different kind of take, but it seems like we're both pretty strong into headphones for now, which
Yeah, for streaming totally.
it's just so much easier to get really good quality that way too.
Yeah, and like using the mixer to get it all easy and to make sure that I don't have to worry about things going back into my mic and all that kind of stuff, it ends up just being a lot easier that way.
For sure. We're at about the 2 hour mark. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great
Cool. Feeling great about going on or cutting off?
about cutting off. I think
All right,
that
man.
was good.
That's cool. Hey, for anyone who's been hanging around in the stream chat, we really appreciate you. This is our first stream direct to YouTube, so I know we have all of our episodes posted here, but this is the one we're first doing live on. So we're just gonna play around with it, see if it's something we want to keep doing. But yeah,
It should heavily reduce our workload as far as like getting them onto other platforms and stuff. Like it's Tuesday or wait, well no, it's Wednesday because
yeah.
we postponed, but yeah, it is that day, and I mean this means that it should be out there
Yeah.
way sooner than the other ones have been. A lot
Yeah.
less lag. So yeah, that's good.
Kind of like it on YouTube. That's good to hear. Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, we appreciate you guys hanging out. Thanks for downloading and listening to this. If you're taking us in your car, in your bathroom, in your kitchen, wherever you may please, we are Invictus Knox and Dash Retro. You can find us all over the internet. Dash Retro is on Twitter and Twitch, and I'm on Instagram. Fuck it, I'm on Twitter everywhere where you can Google Invictus Knox. That's me. So yeah, we'll be back next week if you'll have us.
See you then.
See you guys. Peace.